Now, Deputy O'Brien, you have 15 minutes.
Minister, thank you for outlining the government position, and I think it's useful that we have these statements here today. I'll move on to the content of your contribution shortly, but just to say that it is unfortunate that we're not actually debating a motion here today, and I know that Sinn Féin and ourselves had actually submitted a motion that was agreed, and I know government and most other parties in the Dáil, Greens, Labour and Fine Gael had attempted to do that we would have speak as one voice in the Labour Party indeed. And I do want to put on the record, because there was misinformation given last week here in the Dáil by Deputy Coppinger of the AAA PBP, that this was in some way that all of us had stopped this motion being put forward. The truth of the matter is it was the 6 AAA PBP TDs here who would not agree to a cross-party motion on the basis that they felt that they would reserve the right to amend the motion at any stage. So that is the reality. That's why this morning we are making statements as opposed to actually dealing with the motion where the House could have spoken with one voice. Minister, I do want to thank you for your contribution here this morning and the detail therein, and I have to say there would be very, very little of it that I would disagree with at all, actually, and I think the government's approach to the controversy in relation to the executive order has been very well handled, and I think has been well considered. I think Fianna Fáil ourselves are completely opposed to the executive order issued by new President Donald Trump, which includes the 90-day travel ban from 7 Muslim-majority countries, the 120-day freeze on admission of any refugees into the United States, as well as an indefinite halt to admitting any refugees from Syria. As I mentioned, ourselves and our colleagues in Sinn Féin had put forward a detailed motion condemning the executive order, asking for the government to convey these concerns and to write formally to the US President seeking its repeal. We do believe in Fianna Fáil that the ban is morally wrong, it's discriminatory and it's prejudiced. And whilst we're opposed to the executive order, we're fully committed to maintaining our pre-clearance capabilities and also to maintaining our diplomatic relations between the two countries and to continue to improve them. I think the idea that pre-clearance, as we know, is carried out by US authorities in Dublin and in Shannon. I'm very familiar in particular with the Dublin Airport pre-clearance facilities in my own constituency and the importance of it, I would say as well, since 2009, and it is actually of great benefit to Ireland and to improve investment and travel between both countries, and nothing should be done by this House, by our government or any member of this House, in my view, to actually put that at risk, because the pre-clearance facilities, I have no doubt, underpin many, many hundreds, if not thousands of jobs in this country and indeed in America. Rejecting the facility, as some have called for in this House, would serve only to make travel between Ireland and the US more difficult and would be a premature reaction. And it is simply a reaction from some. I think our job is to try to convince the United States and the new administration that we have a long-standing friendly relationship with, is to try to convince them in diplomatic terms of the error of their way with this executive order. And I think it is only right and proper. I'm glad, Minister, that you raised that issue at your numerous meetings. I know you'll have a new Secretary of State to deal with shortly, with General Flynn departing the stage. But it is important that we do speak loudly as well, in a respectful way as well, as friends to the United States. When we don't agree with something, we should say it. And I'm glad that you have done so in Washington, D.C. at your various meetings at the highest level. And I would hope, and I would ask the Taoiseach directly through you, that in his discussions on St. Patrick's Day with the new President Trump, that it is actually raised with him also directly, and not just with his officials. And I think it is important. I think we can certainly, I think our relationship with America is long-standing, is deep and is unique. Many people claim unique relations with countries. I think our relationship with the United States and vice versa is a unique relationship, and I think that they will know that when our views and any criticisms that we have are meant in the best possible way. The ban itself, whilst it has been suspended and overturned in courts in the United States, I think we should also be mentioned to the US administration. They are parties to the Geneva Convention. We believe actually that the ban of refusing entry or sending people back contravenes Article 33 of the Geneva Convention, which states that no contracting state shall expel or return a refugee in any manner whatsoever to the frontiers of territories where his or her life or freedom will be threatened on account of his race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group or political opinion. And I think that's actually very clear. And that's why I don't believe that the executive order actually stacks up, be that in US law or indeed in international law. There was a lot of debate, as you alluded to, Minister, in your contribution as well, as to whether or not the Taoiseach should still travel to the White House on St Patrick's Day. And I want to put it on the record of the House that we firmly believe in Fianna Fáil that the Taoiseach should indeed travel to the White House on St Patrick's Day. And this visit is more than a photo opportunity that some have felt that it is. It's an opportunity to meet and engage with the new US President and his administration, and is of major strategic importance to Ireland. Maintaining professional relationships with the governments of other countries is central to Ireland's industrial, cultural, economic and diplomatic policies. The upcoming visit to Washington DC should be used as an opportunity to press President Trump on the plight of the undocumented Irish, which I'll return to in a moment, and to explain in clear terms the mutual advantage to both our countries of the presence of US companies operating in Ireland and, as you have outlined as well, of Irish companies operating in the United States, who employ thousands of US citizens in America, and thousands of Irish people here are employed by US companies. And it's that type of partnership relationship that I would like to see us evolve further. That it is not us asking the United States as a junior partner in a relationship. I believe we're the 11th biggest investor on Irish companies in the United States. We're a significant market for them. We're a significant springboard into the European Union. And that partnership approach into the future is the way in which we should be dealing with and working with the new administration. That does not mean, and I think when people are partner and adults about it, that we can criticise each other. We can actually say when we're not happy and when we believe that an administration is going down the wrong road, like it is now with the executive order. But can one imagine what the reaction would be in America and the insults that it would be if this government and the Taoiseach actually followed the line that some members of this House wanted them to do by refusing the invitation and by not travelling to Washington DC on St Patrick's Day? That could very well, maybe an insult to President Trump is what people want. And I have to say that many of his policies I personally would not agree with. And many of them, all I would say to you, Eamon, is that it would be very easy, and indeed I believe actually childish, that if Ireland were to say, well, our head of state is now not going to visit Washington DC on St Patrick's Day. A decades that this facility and this arrangement has been in place. And I just ask you, what message would that send to the American people? What message would it send to the American people? It's all very well, Eamon, it's all very well to say that we will send a clear message to President Trump. What message would it actually send to the American people, to the near 40 million people in America who claim Irish descent and Irish heritage? What message would it actually send, and what effect would it actually have? And what affect would it have on the 50,000 undocumented Irish in America and their plight, when not just this government, but future governments? Brendan, you know, if you were a cabinet, by the way, there is no way on earth that you would have suggested to the Taoiseach 12 months ago not to travel to Washington DC on St Patrick's Day, and to say anything otherwise is absolutely ridiculous and is pushing the bounds of reality. You wouldn't have done it, nor would you, Eamon Ryan, if you were sitting around the cabinet table. There's a reality that we have to deal with, and the long-standing effect. I do not like the executive order. I condemn the executive order, and I've outlined why my party does. But we've also got to live in the real world, and I think there is ways of putting across that our disgust and our displeasure with that order. And doing that is engaging, is not actually stepping back and saying we're not going to visit the White House, we're not going to interact with the new US administration. How easy would you feel, and those members who advocate that our government should not be represented, and the Taoiseach represents the people of Ireland, it's not just the Taoiseach, he represents this Dáil and the people of Ireland. How easy do you feel it would be if the Taoiseach had actually refused that invitation? For us to get other meetings, for the Minister Charlie Flanagan to be able to go over and to advocate for the undocumented Irish, for any of us here, when we pay visits to Congress or to the Senate, to be going to explain why our country would go down that route to effectively insult another nation by refusing an invitation on St. Patrick's Day, our national day, and not just that particular event, all the other events that happen around it. And you know that, and you know that's the case. And it's an easy soundbite on the day when a lot of people, including myself, are extremely angry about the executive order, and many people in America are. And that will be dealt with in America. But it was an easy soundbite for parties to jump on to say that Taoiseach should not travel, we should not go to the United States. It wasn't based in any fact or reality. And I think that ship has sailed. I think the Dáil, and as I outlined earlier on, to move on, I think it is important on this issue that we speak in one voice on the fundamental part of this issue, which is that we as democratically elected members of Dáil Éireann condemn the executive order on the basis that I have aligned that it's discriminatory, in our view that it's racist, that it actually contravenes the Geneva Convention as well. And I hope that this ban is overturned. I hope the administration have a serious rethink about the road that they are going down and the new policies that they are undertaking. Could I just turn very briefly to the matter of the undocumented Irish minister? I, like many here, and Deputy Howell and Deputy Ryan, Deputy Crowe, I'm certain every member of this House has, on any occasion that we go to America, raised the issue of the undocumented Irish. But it seems we're continually raising it and we're not getting any further down the road. I'm just wondering, as opposed to dealing the whole immigration reform that ILO and other groups have come in and are lobbying for overall immigration reform in the United States, it now seems further away than it ever will be. How far down the road are we in relation to discussing a bilateral arrangement that was discussed and that had been discussed at a high level over a number of years, along the lines of the Australian deal that the Australian and the US administrations countries have together, reciprocal visas between both countries, 10,000 each side that Irish undocumented could apply for. Because I think we're going to have to be inventive. I think we're going to have to think in a new way. It is pretty clear under this administration that there will be no major immigration reform. So the plight of our undocumented is even more precarious. And indeed, we have seen the actions of ICE and other agencies in America already clamping down on what they feel are illegal immigrants. But I think that we really need to redouble our efforts. I know in the course of this debate, I'm not sure whether you have an opportunity to respond later on. I'm sure you do, or Minister McHugh is. I would ask him maybe to bring the House up to date. This has to be an absolute priority for us. I would say further, though, and a fair point has been raised with me previously when I've been in America, where we're dealing with 50,000 plus Irish who are undocumented. We have undocumented people here in Ireland as well, and we've always got to remember that. And I think really that all parties, and this government in particular now, because effectively we should really look at dealing with that matter and regularising the undocumented, the people who have been here for 8, 9, 10 years, whose children are born in Ireland and who still have no status. And I think that would actually strengthen our case when we're advocating for Irish citizens abroad, that the Irish state have actually taken a positive step forward in relation to regularising undocumented people who live here in Ireland and who, in my view, deserve now to stay. And we should really look at those elements of it. So, Minister, just to conclude, I think it is very clear that the executive order is most unhelpful. My party condemn it completely, and I would ask that the Taoiseach raise the views of the elected members of this House directly with President Trump and his administration on the 17th of March and at every opportunity thereafter. I think it is unfortunate, as I said earlier on, that we don't have a motion that can be passed from this House, but that is not the fault of anyone who's sitting here in the chamber, and it is also telling that no one from Treble A PBP are here actually to even contribute to this debate when they shouted loudest on the couple of days after the executive order and were beating their chests and pulling their hair out and actually berating everyone else, as Deputy Coppinger did that day, and they're not even here to contribute. And I think that is very telling about their policies and their political approach to issues. So thank you, Minister, for outlining the government position. I hope you take the points of the Fianna Fáil party on board.
Thank you very much, Deputy.